This week on the Footy Mailbag, we talk Bailey Humphrey versus Ryan Maric. We discuss what to do when the taggers come looking for you. We talk about the rookies that are on the bubble, as well as answering all of your questions. Hello and welcome to the Footy Mailbag. My name is Clarky, hosting for this week, and joining me, as always, is my beautiful, beloved co-host, Damo.
Why did you go hosting for this week?
Because I didn't host last week, and I hosted the week before, and then I think you hosted every episode before that. Since the inception of Mailbag. I've actually started cutting in on your turf. If anything, we would be rival gangs vying for the position of hosts in another universe.
I don't know, it just felt like you were channeling like Grant Denyer and this was Deal or No Deal for some reason.
Well, in a way, the Footy Mailbag kind of is Deal or No Deal, Damo.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
It's kind of what we do. It's just like Sans briefcases and more of a sort of theatre of the mind male ranch, if you will. Damo, round 3 is in the books. Football is still bad for Melbourne supporters. Football is still bad for Carlton supporters. Football is still bad for West Coast supporters. And Supercoach is also bad for me. But how did you go post round 3?
Round 3 and Supercoach is also bad for me.
Yeah, it feels that way. Best 18 feels like it should have been kinder to me than it has been.
I'll tell you something about Best 18, actually.
Okay.
I think if it wasn't for Best 18, I would be in a much worse position than I am. So I thank Best 18 for saving me from those Xavier Lindsay 9s and those Mitch Nevitt 20s and those Elijah Hewitt 22s. So thank you, Best 18, but it means I have to still deal with a Finn Callahan 55 or a Lockie Neal 71, which people who had set their team up better when they, started the year didn't have to deal with both of those or even one of them at all if they were that good. So I think Best 18 has saved me from the worst, but I'm still a flaming pile of garbage floating across the Indian Ocean.
It was a week that I think a lot of people felt the pain, and those who aren't feeling the pain are just sort of breathing a sigh of relief, going, I'm glad I didn't do what they did. I think there's a lot of us who are still playing catch up with mid prices, who we spoke about this last week, the Perrymans, the Peatlings, the Roberts, the Callahans, those kinds of guys, and they're sort of proving to be success or bust, and there's sort of no in between for that. Even people who have gone the Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver route, they received back to back 80s. Christian and Clayton decided that they are both going to score exactly the same kind of poor score, and people are going to have to work around this and decide which way. I think this is probably the most pivotal week for coaches, because you have to decide how aggressive you want to be, or whether you're going to invest yourself into the long game to try and climb your way back up the ranks rung by rung. Now, Damo, I want to ask you, what caught your eye from round 3?
What caught my eye? No one's this is not just my Supercoach midfield, but no one's midfield in Supercoach seems to be actually doing the points thing. Like, I've seen lots of screenshots of people's teams, they put their team up and they put their rank up at the end of the round on a Sunday night once everything unlocks, and they go, yay, I scored this and I went up by this much, or oh no, I scored this and went down by this much. And like on their team, I've noticed that all of their points are either coming from their forward line or their defense line. and their midfield is just awful. And in years gone by, the midfield has been the place where you kind of the midfield was your safety net. The midfield was where the guys that were scoring 120s, 110s, 105s would live. But that's not the case this year so far.
Yeah, it feels like the point spread has been a little bit more varied across all lines. I think, we've seen even people like Jack Sinclair's, they came out with a 162 this week rewarding owners, but before that he was probably someone who you're like, I don't know if I'd pay this much for this guy. Harry Sheasel can't even get the rub of the points green. As we've already mentioned, the CCs from Melbourne. Lachie Neale has been tagged for the last 18 years, it feels like. I'm not sure that he's ever been left alone. And we're kind of seeing these second string guys like Sam Davidson had an absolutely mega week this week. 129 from Sam Davidson, which is fantastic for people who own him, fantastic for cash generation, and low-key kind of giving vibes of someone that we might not have to trade for a long time just purely because he's going to be able to put up, 70s, 80s in the forward line. Jason Horne-Francis is only, I think he scored an 82 this week, which feels like the biggest score that he's had so far, if I'm correct. Let me just double check. Sorry. Oh, sorry. He scored an 83 in round one. So I stand corrected. If it does feel like it was the
That's
biggest
much
score
better than at 82.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the only thing that we can say for certain this week is if you don't own Caleb Daniel, if you don't own Jack Macrae, these are the two main guys I think you absolutely need in your team. And everything else, I will fully support you to put whoever you want in any other position, because those are the only two currently consistent scorers that I think I've seen across the formats, at least in my team and in a few teams of the people that are around. It's a tough year, Damo. It's a really tough year. I think that's what actually caught my eye this week, is thinking, oh yeah, okay, cool. Jack Macrae is just a VC or a C option every week at this rate. He has turned up in poor games for St Kilda. He's turned up in a great game for St Kilda. And he literally is just accumulating. He is back to the Jack Macrae we knew of, what was that, 2018? 2019? One of those years where he was the top scoring midfielder for that year. I remember he was the guy and then just kind of fell off into obscurity, and he's back.
Just goes to show when you play someone in the position they're good at, they score well.
Yeah. He's the king among jacks. Now,
also, if you didn't start him and you need him, you're paying almost 100k above his starting price to get him in. That was a big miss. And considering he's in 74% of teams, there is not a lot of people out there who don't have him. So if you are one of those 26% who do not have him, I would love to know your plan to get him in. I would love to know what sold you to not start him. Because remember, I was very close. I remember I was very close in the preseason to not starting Jack Macrae. Boy, oh boy, I'm glad I followed the crowd, and now he's the best player in my team.
I think, here's the thing, right? Supercoach hindsight exists, and I think we talk about this a lot on the mailbag about not using hindsight to self-deprecate, right? Because you couldn't have known. There were a lot of question marks about St Kilda, and you know what? Rightfully so, Damo, we have had it pointed out that we are not necessarily a pro St Kilda podcast here. I don't have anything particularly nasty to say for them apart from I don't like Ross Lyon. Gives off bad human vibes, but this year they have been performing a lot better. They have a lot of players that I generally like. Nasiah Wangoni-Malera, Jack Sinclair, Jack Steele, I think is a great footballer. I am a full believer that Max King will eventually come good. And now Jack Macrae has come across. So I think we were right to have question marks knowing what we knew about how St Kilda scored in 2024 compared to how they're scoring now. Their style of football that is still that defensive Ross Lyon style, but it's actually kind of adapted to be a little bit like the accumulating possessions are now more effective because they've got the right personnel in the right positions, which means that it's actually way more lucrative to scoring, I think is what we're generally seeing. I still, you'd still probably have to pay me to sit down and watch a full game, a St Kilda game, or it has to be the only one that's on TV. But I'm happy to have started him in Supercoach, and I think if you didn't start him because you had doubts, there has been a couple of weeks where you probably should have jumped on him, and I think there's still a really good reason to jump on him. Short of that, the next opportunity will probably be once he gets his DPP and is able to be moved in as a mid. You might consider him as one of your mid upgrades. Now, I want to move along from Jack McRae and what we noticed this week because I have a question. Damon, I didn't watch a hell of a lot of football this weekend. I had other commitments going on. But coming out of this weekend, I've noticed a lot of people talking about one Bailey Humphrey and one Ryan Maric. Can you tell me what's going on there? Can we fill in the listeners who maybe don't know why we're discussing these two players?
Sure. So I'll start with Ryan Maric, plays for West Coast. So he's the one I'm most familiar with in terms of performance because I did watch that game. Thankfully, Fremantle have now won a game, and I'm not a sad football person. I would still like them to win more games, but one win's a good start.
Yeah,
and
you're just a sad Supercoach person.
Correct. And he scored 123, pretty much intercepting most of the bombs into the forward line that, has become customary in Fremantle's game plan. And he was having a great time. 123, I said, and people are like, wow, he's done a great job, forgetting that he scored a 33 in round 1 and then a 72 against Brisbane the week after. And now we don't know what's going on with Jeremy McGovern. There's a chance he could play, but he's probably not. Harry Edwards was subbed out. Maybe he is injured. I don't know why they subbed him out, but he was also subbed out. So maybe Ryan Maric might not be a good idea because he's having to play as a key defender now, because I don't believe they have that many players who can play key defense on their list with any experience. Ruben Jinby was against Jai Amos in that last quarter, and that was an interesting scenario there. So I don't know if Ryan Maric is the best option. I think people are seeing a big score, seeing a negative break even, and jumping on the money train, even though the money train might stop in a couple stations' time.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, really, when you're looking for players to bring in and you're looking for... Everyone kind of wants to discover the next big thing before everyone else, right? It's essentially a gold rush of players. So I think it makes sense if you look at the negative break even, but I think that's really good context around maybe why we should be wary. Now, talk to me about Bailey Humphrey.
Okay, Bailey Humphrey, if I continue on the train analogies, if you hop off the Ryan Maric train and cross the platform, there's another train. It's leaving very quickly, very soon. It's the Bailey Humphrey money train. He scored 104 in round 1, and then they had their bye, but then he scored 111 in round 3. He's 270k with a break-even of minus 55. I've looked into Bailey Humphrey a little more than I have Ryan Maric because I'm much more on the Bailey Humphrey train. I've got myself a seat next to the conductor.
I don't think you're allowed in the captain.
Does the conductor sit down? I'm not sure.
I think they do. I think the train drivers do. I don't know if is conductor a different position.
I don't know. I'm thinking about. For some reason, my head is looking at the Polar Express train. So that's what's in my imagination at the moment. So anyway, Bailey Humphrey. He's done this before. He has had this high scoring role before, this midfield rolling into the half forward line role before. And yeah, they probably haven't played some high end teams. Sorry, Clarky. Over these first few weeks, but I think that his role is sustainable because he's done it before. Back in 2023, his debut season, he went on a run where he scored 117, 101, 90, 99, and then sort of fizzled out with a 74, and then went back to more of a pressurized, specialized, small forward role. Whereas in that run where he had those nice 90 plus scores, he was playing that center square, rolling in from half forward, and he became part of the midfield mix once the ball was bounced. So he's had this role before, and I think people are kind of looking at who Gold Coast have played compared to who West Coast have played, but haven't looked at anything apart from that with any great context. And I could be completely wrong here, but Bailey Humphrey only needs to average 80 from now on until round 10 to make 150k. I'm not expecting 110s every week from him, but if he can average 80 from now on until round 10, when I might jump off him, who knows? He might even be a top forward. We don't know, but I really like Bailey Humphrey, and I'm banking on him as a money maker, not as a keeper. And an 80 average from now, I would still call that a massive tick.
So, coming up, Gold Coast face Adelaide this week, then North Melbourne, Richmond, Sydney, Brisbane, Western Bulldogs, and Hawthorn. So, you'd probably argue that there's only really maybe 2 games in there where Gold Coast are clear favourites coming into it. Do you think that maybe the fixture's a little bit unkind? Do you think that the role is good enough?
I mean, he's got Adelaide this week. Adelaide don't have a great defensive setup. They still conceded 100 points to Essendon in that game. So, and then they've got North, who again are still kind of finding their way. Richmond at Marvel Stadium, they should be pretty good there. They match up really well against Sydney. I know it's the John Longmire Sydney that they've played in the past, but I think they should be okay against Sydney. Brisbane at the Gabba, that's a Q clash. That could be anything. Western Bulldogs and then Hawthorn at TIO Stadium, where they just go to another level. Like the last few years, we've seen a completely different Gold Coast at TIO Stadium. So I'm pretty comfortable that Bailey Humphrey can have a decent run, and he's averaging 107.5 over 2 games. I'm not expecting him to stay above 100 average, but if he can go 80s across the board until round 10 as like the average across that time, I will be perfectly happy with him getting to about that 400 to 420k mark. And, eventually I can jump off him and actually pick someone who is gonna be a keeper for the rest of the season.
Makes perfect sense to me. So the official position of the footy mailbag is Bailey Humphrey over Ryan Maric if we are comparing those two in a head-to-head format. However, there are maybe other rookies that you have missed. So as always, we put in the asterisk of make sure that your team structure suits what you are willing to accept as your risk factors. Demo, Lachlan Neale. Mr. Lachlan Neale. That man, as I mentioned, has now been tagged for 47 years. He has not had a single moment to come up for breath. Who are we thinking is going to cop this tag next, right? Like, surely it can't stay on Neale forever. We could talk about Neale, but we know that tags don't last forever. But I've actually realised that the way that this question is phrased is actually about taggers, not about Lachlan Neale.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
the tag's back.
Lockie Neale has Richmond this week. He might receive attention from a Camden McIntosh, but expecting him to bounce back once again and be fine. Let's look at Toby Bedford to begin with. He's become someone who can shut players down pretty well. He's got West Coast this week. He might just have a free game. He might just be able to play football this week. He might not need to tag this week. Then he's got St Kilda, Jack McRae or Jack Steele. Then he's got Adelaide, Isaac Rankin, Jordan Dawson, one of those two guys. Western Bulldogs, is Bont back then? Does he tag Bont? Or does he go to someone like a Matthew Kennedy or an Ed Richards? One of those guys.
Bont's about a month away, I think, approximately still, so he might still be out by then.
Yeah, so round 7's about a month away. Right? Round 7's about a month away.
Yeah, maybe Libba could be another target.
And then he's got Sydney, Chad, Heaney, someone. And then he's got Geelong, Max Holmes will get the tag there. I won't go the entire way down the fixture. That's going to take too long. So there's a few guys who we need to worry about, but I think we should be on a pretty free-ish run from here in terms of the Bedford tags. James Jordan actually is a little more scary. He's completely shut down players. The way he put Lockie Neal to sleep in round 1, yes, it was round 1, that was scary. That was very scary. This week he has North Melbourne. You'd assume he goes to Davies Uniacke, but, Sheasel is still there and could potentially receive attention. Then Collingwood, Nick Dacos, perhaps. Port Adelaide, by then Butters might be back, but we go to a Butters coming off injury? Yeah, probably. It'll be Butters, Rosie, Horn-Francis. Then he's got Gold Coast. Matt Rowell's are probably too inside for James Jordan, but fits the Lockie Neal mould, so could definitely go there. Noah Anderson is also in danger. And then GWS, Tom Green, Finn Callahan, Josh Kelly, one of those guys will probably receive attention in that game. So they both have some pretty big targets over the next few weeks, and we've seen lots of teams deploy a run with type player, but Bedford and Jordan seemingly are the guys where we really need to, keep an eye out, because they're shutting down some very good players and it's frustrating.
So when we talk about the tag, we've spoken about a few different scenarios, right? Where should we be targeting these number 2, like the next up midfielders, right? Who score pretty well, but now that the tag's back in vogue, probably have to competently take on more workload, which means increase in scoring. So we're talking about the Josh Dunkleys, the Liberatores when Bontempelli's back, I suppose in some cases like the Christian Petrarca, Clayton Olivers, like whichever one of them's not getting tagged. Do we think that we need to just absorb the tag and go for these still top tier premium guys? Or do we go for those second string guys?
The good news is a tag is only 1 week, and that team won't play against that player every single week. I think it's targeting a player for their run. So Lockie Neal has played Sydney, then West Coast, and then who did they just play on the weekend? I'm so bad at this. Whoever they played on the weekend, he got tagged by Mark O'Connor. So Geelong. So he had 2 tags in 3 weeks. Ideally, we should have seen this coming, but Geelong was supposed to play an opening round, so we wouldn't have had that score to worry about had that game gone ahead. And yes, we had the chance to pivot, but I don't think people had in their minds that there's no tag for Lockie Neal now. He usually starts the year really well. We want him, we need him, etc., etc., etc. I think it's about timing the run. You don't want to target a player who's going to come up against the Giants, the Swans, and then Geelong in a 3-game stretch as soon as you trade them in. One of those teams is fine, maybe later in the season if possible, so you get the best scores early, but I don't think completely avoiding these players because of the tag is the smart way to go. You still want these high-end guys in your teams. Just make sure you're doing some good old fixture watching and not jumping on when they are about to be put to sleep.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Do you want to bring up your next point?
Clarky, you mentioned earlier that it's 2020 vision in Supercoach is not always good to bring up, but people come to me and ask me questions about Fremantle. In the preseason, I had lots of questions about Fremantle. Everything that I said about Fremantle has come true. So, to use a phrase from the late, great Danny Frawley, I'm going to go on a bit of a head wobble here. I said Jordan Clark over Luke Ryan. I said Andy Brayshaw over Caleb Sarong. And I said that Nathan O'Driscoll was best 22 and will score better or equal to similar price draftees. Tick, tick, tick.
Hey, no one does it better, Damo. I think,
And
I think it's important for you to celebrate your wins. This is really just a brag segment for Damo. I don't really have any notes for this because, as he pointed out, he is correct on all three fronts there. But I did start Brayshaw on your advice, so I guess thank you.
You're welcome. We have some bubble rookies. People might
do.
actually be downgrading this week. That is scary.
Oh.
It is round 4. We're heading into round 4. Riley Bice, Christian Moraes, Ted Closey, Neil Erasmus, Lance Collard, Isaac Keeler, Ethan Reed, all on the bubble. I think I've missed a couple players, but those are the main ones. I don't think rookies have made enough money for us to be downgrading, but I really like some of the guys that I mentioned at the top of that list. Riley Bice, if people need to shore up their defense rookies, he should be good. I'm personally going for a Christian Moraes. I could go for a Bice, but I like Christian Moraes. He looked really good on, was it Thursday night against Essendon? He looked really good in that game. I have no qualms about bringing him in. He's a winger. He's actually playing a very similar role to Sam Davidson, which gives me a lot of confidence in bringing him in. Ted Closey is a mature age, or has been on the list at Geelong for long enough that he is now a mature age recruit, and he looked okay. He came in as a late change against St Kilda the week before. He backed up what he did against Brisbane, so he's a guy that kind of sliding under the radar. And then Neil Erasmus probably doesn't have the job security with Hayden Young coming back soon, maybe even this week. Lance Collard can't seem to lock down a place in the St Kilda side, so how long until he is turfed? Isaac Keeler and Ethan Reed are both key position guys who could drop a 20 any day now. So I think most people are tossing up between Bice, Moraes, and Closey, with Bice and Moraes being the main two-party vote there.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense, right? Obviously, pending teams to ensure that these bubble guys get that all important, at least the next game, to make some money. Probably some popular trade outs for that would be, I can probably imagine Finn O'Sullivan to Moraes being quite a popular trade, or pending teams Ben Patton to Riley Bice probably makes the most sense this week. But it is the best 18 week again. Hawthorn and Essendon both on a bye. So it's the last best 18 week until round 12 we have here in our notes for the episode. So this is it. This is probably the last chance that you have to make sure that you have 22 good-ish guys before we go back to that full scoring, and you'll probably start to feel yourself slipping behind if you're not either getting the economy or you're not aggressively trading to get these top targets so that you can sort of jump before everybody else.
Clarky, let's go through some injuries and suspensions. Xavier Lindsay has escaped serious knee injury and is a watch for, and originally was a watch for this week, but Alan Richardson has now said that he will miss at least 1 week of football, listed as 1 to 2 on the Melbourne injury report. Tom Stewart was a late out last week, but should play this week. D8 rookie Liam O'Connell, I've seen him in a few sides. I think Supercoach with DR had him just to drop another person that might have had him. He's in concussion protocols and will miss this week's game against Port Adelaide. Hayden Young and Sean Darcy set to return to footy this week. Darcy likely via the waffle. Marcus Bontempelli is unlikely to return until after gather round, that is via Mitch Cleary. No actual time frame really offered there, but about a month is what they're saying. Jake Kolodjasny is due to return for Geelong. He was a test on their injury report this week, so what does that mean for Sam De Koning or Connor O'Sullivan? And Callum Mills is still at least a month away from returning to the Sydney side.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of big names in that list that we need to
Absolutely, yeah.
be.
I made sure to keep it super coach relevant.
Yeah, that's good. I look forward to having Hayden Young back because I do own him in a keeper league.
I picked him up in a couple of draft leagues. He slipped very late. I don't think people realized it was just a low grade hamstring. Like he didn't do his knee, he didn't do his shoulder, he didn't do any of that thing. It was just low grade hamstring. He was fine. He'll be back. He'll be okay.
He'll be okay. All right, now on to the questions. We're going to head out back into the question fields of the question ranch. Now, listeners, just a reminder to make sure you have your questions submitted by 8 p.m. Melbourne time on the Wednesday each week. We record after that time on Wednesdays, so we do get questions that come in after that, and unfortunately, we are not able to answer them on the show. However, if possible, or if you happen to have messaged our page, we may get back to you if we have capacity at that time. You can also now send us voice memos. Damo has set that up. The link is on our website next to the question form.
Yeah, so if you don't want to type your question, you can just yell your question at us.
Yeah. Please don't yell. I'm a very sensitive boy. Now, our first question for the week comes from Jeffrey Head. He asks, who do you think will be the slowest burning midfield rookie, assuming they all play and once they are fit? Nevitt, Lindsay, Levi Lashcroft, sorry, it caught me for a second, Kako, or Hewitt. Can you please rank them for potential cash generation, job security, and slow burn?
So the way you have listed those guys is pretty much in order. For me, I think it's Ashcroft first, Lindsay second, Nevitt third, Kako fourth, and Hewitt fifth. So I'd swap Ashcroft and Nevitt. But I think you've pretty much got the order there, with Hewitt being the slowest burn, lowest job security kind of, and then Kako. Kako has better job security, but might be slower than Hewitt because of the way that he's a small forward. Nevitt, if he's going to get the sub vest or have a sub vest waved near him at any point, he's going to be slowish, but he's also, I don't think he's going to be the sub every single week. And the word out of Geelong is he's had a great preseason. They want him in that team. So I'm expecting him to not have the sub vest this Friday night. And I'm assuming that he was only the sub to manage that short turnaround. That would be the explanation in my head. I haven't said anything. So I would assume that he gets a full game this week. And then Lindsay should come straight back in once he's fit. And I don't see Ashcroft missing a game unless he gets injured either. So I think Ashcroft, then Lindsay, then Nevitt, then Kako, then Hewitt.
Yeah.
Thanks for your question, Jeff.
Yeah, that all tracks for me. Next up, we have one from Sir420. Is using a second boost now too early if it's to correct some issues? Thinking Sheasel to Whitfield or Jason Horne-Francis to Rankin/Humphrey, if either is worth it. Which should take priority? You have a second part, but we'll answer that one first.
I think hold Harry Sheasel. The role is there, and we've seen him score well in spurts. He just needs to. They've kind of changed his role to fit what the team is doing, and the team's doing well, and the team has definitely improved. And once he kind of lifts himself to that level, he should be fine. He had a 40-point quarter in that last quarter against Adelaide, so we have seen that kind of scoring from him, and he should be fine eventually. I've still got faith in Sheasel. Jason Horne-Francis to Rankin or Humphrey is probably the one that should take priority. But again, Jason Horne-Francis showed that he could score quickly and well in that last quarter against Essendon with also a 40-point quarter. So I love the bringing in of Isaac Rankin. I think he's going to be one of the top forwards. And if you're willing to move on a Horne-Francis because maybe you don't believe he's going to end up as a top forward, and Rankin, is trending in that direction, then that's fine. And that's probably the one that should take priority. And Humphrey is more of a money maker, whereas you probably selected Horne-Francis to be a keeper. Rankin will be in that same boat. you probably want to swap a keeper for a keeper, then swap a keeper for a moneymaker that you're going to eventually have to use another trade to move out later.
So I've already mentioned this about this week kind of being the last week you have to decide the path that you're going to take long term, right? So are you going to aggressively trade to try and get as high up the ranks as you can? Or are you going to focus on economy and go with the slow burn, slow upgrade and ride out some of these premiums who are underperforming, right? Sheasel and Horn Francis they're very widely owned players. I think we all kind of saw what the potential was in the preseason and we all selected them. It was a pretty commonly discussed thing of why we know what Sheasel is capable of. He went massive in the preseason games and then has just kind of been a bit disappointing, or not entirely awful from a football perspective, but super great scoring, not terrible. Jason Horne-Francis, it feels like there's something maybe deeper going on. His level of football is not quite being there, but I think that should come good. I think he's still popping out 80s and we know what the ceiling is. My tossing and turning has sort of led me to the decision that focusing on rookie economy is going to be much more beneficial in the long term rather than bringing in the guy who's scoring well now. It's hard to feel like it, like round 3, but it feels like it's been a lifetime, but also it's still so far away from what's left to go for Supercoach. So Sir 420 had a second part to his submission. Is culling Pryor early to bank 90k a sensible investment, or should other rookies be corrected instead? I currently have 167k in the bank to use, and I feel like Bice would be good to try and slot in somehow, hence me considering Pryor out for him.
I think out of the rookies that are out there, Bice is probably the one you can fade the most, because we've got Travalia coming up, we've got El Hooley coming up, we've got... Those are the main ones coming to my head at the moment. I know there is more, but I don't have them written down. Those guys are coming on the horizon. So if you miss out on Bice, there are others coming that maybe other people might be in your situation where they don't have enough rookies that have fattened up to go down to those guys. So if you don't get Bice, who, by the way, I don't know if he has the greatest job security, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think El Hooley's going to get a fairly good run. I think Travalia is going to get a fairly good run at St Kilda. So both of those guys should be okay trade-ins if you miss out on Bice this week. I reckon the way Pryor played against Port Adelaide, his cash generation got a kickstart there with the score that he finished on. So I think you hold. I think you hold this one and just let Bice go.
Yeah, I think we don't need to be in a rush to get the guy with the highest upside for one generation. Pryor has been what seemed like he was going to be a bit of a slow burn and has just sort of had a really good game coming into his bye and still has a break even of -12, which is perfectly cromulent. I don't think you should be correcting in any case when he's still got money to make for a guy who's him and Pryor and Reed feel pretty locked into the Bombers' defensive structure at the moment. And I think maybe Ridley coming back probably does lower their scoring potential a bit. But that being said, there's no downside at the moment to sort of ride the guys and save the trade, especially in a best 18 week for Bice, who maybe gets one price rise and, you know, hindsight can be a bitch and he might play the next 6 games, right, and make a bunch of money. But at the same time, he could play one game and then never come back again. So I'd probably save the trade. Your 167k in the bank is pretty good kitty anyway. I don't think you need to be in a rush to sort of stockpile cash at this time. You got to get rid of these rookies who are dead. So I don't know if we have mentioned it, but like Kemp-Rial got dropped this week. We have Lindsay if people are holding Sardis. These are kind of the trades that you need to be considering more than cashing in the rookies straight away. Hey, Damo, who's that at the door? Oh my god, it's Nebulous Tim. Nebulous Tim is back. Hi, Nebulous Tim. Thank you for your question again. Tim has asked us, do you think Jez Cameron should be traded? I thought his role would be... Oh, God. Damo, can you please read this one?
Clarky's eyes have stopped working.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I legitimately have an appointment with the ophthalmology clinic at the Royal Melbourne this week. My eyes are not doing good. That's a real thing that is happening in my life, team.
Let's start this question from the top, because my eyes are still working. They still can read.
Hey, Damo, it's at the door. It's Nebulous Tim. Tim, come on in. Ask your question.
He says, do you think Jez Cameron should be traded? I thought his role would alter, but it seems Neil has taken Hawkins' spot and Jez could be a 30 or 150 on any given week. I could go up to a primo along with getting a rookie on the bubble, or go down to a Bailey Smith and bank some cash. Is it worth the trade, and do you think up or down?
Trading Jeremy Cameron to Bailey Smith should be the easiest trade that you ever make, Tim. I think that makes perfect sense, and I completely agree, because I was someone who almost started Jezza. I love Jeremy Cameron's game because the way he scores reminds me a little bit of Max Gawn, right? Where there are just these games where he feels like he literally plays every position on the field. Right, like if there was a game call that I heard was like Jeremy Cameron kicks it into Jeremy Cameron, who runs up the wing and kicks it long to Jeremy Cameron in the forward line, I would not be surprised at any point. But he just hasn't either needed to do that or hasn't been able to do that, and I think relying on him to have that role and necessity, when in reality it's just a matter of his talent sort of coming through in some games but not others. Bailey Smith has a role that we now have seen it's pretty well locked in. So there's absolutely no reason for you to not trade down for him, bank the money that you sort of save for that trade, and then use that for rookies elsewhere.
Excellent. No notes from me.
Damo's nodding. That's good. Thanks, Nebulous Tim. We'll see you next week, hopefully. We love all of you.
Clarky, I think you started something, because the next question comes from Jevs, but he is also happy to be a Nebulous Tim.
I don't think we should allow Nebulous Tim to absorb more of our listeners, because we need you all to have individual accounts, because it makes our views go up. Guys, we need the stats. Leave us reviews, please. 5 stars only, though. If it's less than 5 stars, you get absorbed into Nebulous Tim.
Clarky, I assume your eyes are still needing to reset?
Let's go. I'm just going to remove it. They've got baby fingerprints all over them from my wonderful, wonderful daughter. Nebulous Jevs, the newest addition to Nebulous Tim, asks, should I boost Finn O'Sullivan to Murphy Reed? Damo. Is he safe when Young gets back? Fair question. I have thought about the same thing.
Murphy Reed is absolutely safe when Hayden Young gets back. Who isn't safe is Neil Erasmus, who is a bubble rookie this week, who I've seen traded in to a lot of teams. If you're going to go for a Fremantle rookie this week, even though he has gone up about 60k, I think Murphy Reed is still at a price where you can get him. However, if you don't get him this week, he's gone. You've missed the train.
Okay. That seems pretty fair. I really like Murphy Reed as well. Finn O'Sullivan is not scoring well for a rookie that is pretty expensive. Although Murphy Reed has already had a price rise, has he not?
So he was 131 or 131, and he's now 199. So you want to get him before he reaches the 200k, and he's right on the doorstep.
I would potentially argue that if you're trading Finn O'Sullivan, your ideal candidate should be Maric, who we kind of mentioned before. I literally mentioned this exact trade only because
you make more money.
Murphy Reed, good vibes, but you've already missed his biggest price rise, really, unless he starts scoring triple figures for the next couple weeks. Which I
still really like Murphy Reed as an option, but to get the most money out of your trade, I think Christian Maric is better. I agree with that.
Yes, although if you already have Maric, then it's kind of a moot point. Dude, do what you got to do. It's good vibes, though. Murphy Reed, real good vibes. Now, we'll move on to Ron, Con, not Ron. Jesus fucking Christ, my fucking eyes. Con. You know what, let's just zoom right on in. Man, I'm having a time. Listeners, I'm not joking. I'm not going to reveal my medical information, but I genuinely have an appointment for my eyes. In 6 to 12 months, my eyesight's going to be mildly better. Con, I know who Con is. We love Con. Con's a very, very loyal listener and a loyal question asker. We love you, Con.
Not to be confused with Ron, who has never asked a question.
Ron, you're on fucking thin ice. Right? I know you're out there. I traded O'Sullivan to Bailey Humphrey and kept Horn Francis. Should I undo the trade and jump off Francis or stick to my guns? I think you've made the right trade.
I love that trade. I love that trade.
It makes sense. Do it.
We don't even need to respond to this. Just stick to your guns. Awesome. Done. Next question.
I love it. I love it when listeners come to us with a question that no, your gut instinct is right. That's easy. The results may vary though, Con. And Ron, I'm fucking onto you, mate. You fucking come around my house again without a question and you will find out. All right, our final question for this week is from Matt. Matt has written in and said, "Hi guys, I'm considering adding Maric to my team with DPP coming soon. Can he get defender status as he is already a forward mid? I already have Bice and was holding Finn O'Sullivan in the flex waiting for DPP to use him as a defensive rookie, likely to replace Pryor. Is Finn O'Sullivan to Maric worth spending 60k? P.S. I just think you guys are neat." Hey, we appreciate that, Matt. Thank you.
Clarky, I'm worried for your eyes.
Why? Which part did I mess up?
Because he clearly says pattern.
What did I say?
Pryor.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, okay. Clarky's eyes need a reboot, and he's gonna get there soon.
It's not a reboot. I got a thing with them that's
fine. Anyway. We don't need to talk about Clarky's medical journey. That's a different podcast coming soon.
Notice, okay, so listeners, fair warning, there will be a week where I'm not here. That'll be the week that you'll know I've had the eye surgery that I'm currently going through the public system to get. All right, so actually, it might, there might be just another week where I'm not there, but there's a good chance that this year I will not be here for a week, and it's because I'm recovering from eye surgery. Because Melbourne makes me gouge out my own eyes, potentially. Anyway, sorry, to replace Patton, good idea.
Yes.
I don't think so. First answer, no. Maric can't get a third position. He is a forward mid. No matter where he plays, he will always be a forward mid. Unfortunately, they don't have third positions.
Is Foster Maric worth spending the extra 60k? I probably would also say no.
Yeah, I don't have enough faith in Maric or West Coast. Unfortunately, I don't think it makes much sense to spend.
And it's only an extra 5k to go from Foz to Humphrey, who we've already said is probably the better option. So if you can spend 65k to go from Foz to Humphrey, yes, do that.
I was wondering where that math was going for the extra 6k. Sorry, I've just understood. Extra 6k on the 60k to go from Foz to okay.
That's what I said.
Yeah, I got there. Yeah, anyway. I agree. It's just hard to have faith in a guy who hasn't done it before, right? Like that seems like the sensible level of doubt that we have in Maric. But that also being said, we're pretty fucking cursed this year, Damo. Can we have a... Matt, thank you so much for the question, and thank you for the kind words. We really, really appreciate you listening. We have a really wonderful community, and we love that you're part of it because you guys are all so positive, and we just want Supercoach to be fun for everyone because this is a game that we should all enjoy together. Now, Damo, I want to talk about the curse of the mailbag to bring the somber mood down. Certain boxes, listeners, of the cheat sheet this year. The traffic lights.
Clark? Yeah. You're going back in time.
I know.
Not only are your eyes failing you, but so is your memory.
I'm Benjamin Buttoning my way into oblivion. So, certain boxes of the traffic lights this year seem to have been cursed. And I don't know who. I'm assuming Ron. I'm assuming this is why I haven't seen Ron's face around lately. And I think we owe you an apology. We understand that the cheat sheet again, traffic lights. We understand that the traffic lights come out, and you should know that we release them with the best intentions, with the best information that is available to us at the time. But also, it now comes with a curse. So, fair warning. Which box is cursed, Amo? It's the first mid box, isn't it?
The first mid box. So I did Will Day, dead. And then I did Connor Rosie, dead.
Will Day alive this week, though, but dead next week because he's on a bye.
No, he's dead this week because he's on a bye.
Yeah, whatever. Wait, last week, didn't he? He turned up last week. That's not that bad.
Yeah, but the week before. But the week before.
Yeah. We're saying the same thing, but different. We're different, but we're the same. Anyway, we're going to make an executive call. I haven't discussed this with Damo, but I will say that we are discussing behind the scenes whether to temporarily put that box under construction until we can get some sage in there or possibly some kind of crystals. We're discussing our options. We don't need that kind of juju around the ranch. We don't need that kind of juju around the traffic lights, but you know, we do our best with the information available to us. And curse, much like injury, you can't always account for. That being said, keep a lookout for the traffic lights across our socials and on our website. Our traffic lights are a guide where we'll grade some players each week and whether they will be awarded a green, yellow, or red rating. Green indicates a good pick, yellow is a watch or a hold, and a red is a trade or a void. Players earn their ratings for several reasons, including but not limited to scoring potential, job security, price point, reliability, or injury status. It's posted shortly after teams drop on a Thursday with an update on Friday if needed, once Sunday teams confirmed. I would also like to just do another little bit of housekeeping while we have everyone's attention, Damo, which is commenting on a traffic lights about something being a bad decision or a bad thing to put on the traffic lights after a game has happened. It's not as constructive as some people maybe think it is, but we find it very funny. So keep doing it. Don't stop.
Yeah. The traffic lights are a guide. They're not a Bible. You don't need to go buy the traffic lights to completely...
No, they do. The traffic lights are lawfully bound to our listeners.
Yeah, right. I forgot about that. I forgot about the contract they signed when they first started listening.
This is a good metaphor-heavy episode. Sorry, the Theatre of the Mind episode. No, I agree. We put it out as a guide with the best information we have available, and I'd like to once again take a time to say Damo does a lot of fucking work on these because I am a new dad and I don't have a lot of time, so Damo does most of the heavy lifting and I just have input or try to point out any spelling errors I find in the first draft, which has been harder with my eyes not being good. But yeah, hey Damo, let's move on from this cursed segment that seems to never be ending. On to our vice captains and captains for this week. Damo, who is your vice captain choice for this week?
I've got my vice captain on Lockie Neal against Richmond.
Okay, that makes sense. Why Lockie Neal?
Why not Lockie Neal?
That's fair. I'm just asking questions, bro. It's a free country. I can ask questions.
No, to answer your question, you know, to not be cheeky about it, he actually has a really good average against Richmond. His last 3 games against them is 162, 143, and 110. So Richmond haven't really been shutting down midfields that comprehensively this season, and Lockie Neal has a good history against them, you know, to boot. So, vice captain Lockie Neal.
Very good. For me this week, I will be backing in my boy for some good juju. Maximum Gorn will be my vice captain for this week. Melbourne, look, listen, I know like we kind of talk footy adjacently and you kind of get little hints into our opinions, but like I'm in strife right now. I've been going through all the stages of trying to accept where Melbourne are at. I've forcibly removed Simon's surname from my memory. I still think Max Gorn is a good matchup against an SDK and Blitzarv's combo
Whoever it
slash
ends up
question mark.
being,
Yeah, whoever it
yeah.
ends up being. Max Gorn was soundly beaten by Tristan Sherry, who is probably this year so far one of the best rucks in the league. Before that, he had a sorry, not this week. That was last week. He was beaten by Sherry. This week against Wits is a pretty neutral matchup. I don't think they ever really have great games against Gold Coast. So I think coming up against nobody should be a relatively good return to form for Max Gorn.
He usually does pretty well at GMHBA Stadium as well, I believe.
Yeah. He kicked that goal after the siren to put us on top of the ladder in 2021, which was pretty sick. I think he did that at GMHBA, right? If I remember correctly.
Can't remember.
You can fact check me while I look through the rest of the things, and I start talking about my captain options for this week. Now, the first captain option that comes to my little old brain is Lockie Whitfield against West Coast. I brought in Lockie Whitfield last week because I needed to get rid of Harry Perryman, and I was lucky enough to be able to afford that. Lockie Whitfield is absolutely killing it at the moment. GWS should win this game by like 100 points. It's a home game for them. He's averaging over 100. But it's everything kind of lining up, right? Like I don't know. It's just the vibes. It's Marbo. Damo, who's your captain?
Look, I was considering a Lockie Whitfield. I brought him in as well, also replaced Harry Perryman, and I think he's going to be a very good captaincy option, but I'm going for Jack McRae against Port Adelaide.
That's fair. Do you think that he might get some attention or a run with from a Willem Drew, potentially?
I don't know. Like, they didn't really run with against Essendon. I think they abandoned that pretty quickly once they realised the game was going the wrong way. So I'm not worried. I'm not worried about a tag. To be honest, I don't know if I'm going to need my captain.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I mean, we always hope not to need our captains,
on that Sunday, I've got multiple options. I've got Lockie Whitfield, I've got Jack McRae, I've got Andy Brayshaw, I've got other guys that I can pivot to.
Yeah, I think I've got an option in just about every game this week, bar the Collingwood Carlton and the the Gold Coast Adelaide game, sorry. Which is pretty nice. It's a pretty good, I love a bye week because you can literally VC it. You don't have to worry about loopholing. Loopholing is stressful, and I end up checking my phone like multiple times in a row just to make sure that I have completed the loop correctly. So best 18 is nice for that. Damo, just before we sign out for the week, I do want to ask, just to give listeners a little bit of insight into where we are thinking about moving for our teams this week. I thought it'd be nice if we could just quickly shout through what our trade ideas for our teams are this week. I'll start. I'm only making one trade this week so far, which is Finn O'Sullivan to Christian Moraes, but that also could be to Bailey Humphreys for me, depending on teams. I want to make sure Moraes is named first. The massive negative break even for me seems to be the way to go. And as much as I want to trade Horn Francisson, Cheezel and Gorn and Petrarca and Oliver and all of my fucking players in my garbage fire, I am focusing on economy because I believe that I want to play the long-term game and I want to be sensible. I don't want to be as reactive as I was last year.
Clarky, I'm becoming very reactive. I'm doing the opposite of what you're doing. I have brought in Moraes, I have brought in Humphrey, and I have also brought in Isaac Rankin.
Ooh,
so I've gotten rid of Davies Uniacke. He hasn't been doing anything anywhere close to the thing, and I can't even say I can't even say that I have seen the scoring because I just haven't. He did it in round 1. Haven't seen it in the 2 rounds since. He's gone. Isaac Rankin is going to get too far away from me if I don't grab him now. So I've gone LDU to Isaac Rankin. Sam Powell-Pepper has become Bailey Humphrey. and I can't hold both Sartis and Lindsay. I like Lindsay a lot more than Sartis, so Sartis has become Christian Moraes.
Excellent, that makes sense. So I thought that's good just to give the listeners a bit of an idea of what we're doing with our own teams. And it's nice that you and I have kind of swapped ethos for this year, because I feel like I remember you being very calm last year, and I'm trying to find a little
Clarky,
bit calm.
I was calm last year because everything I was doing worked.
And just remember, listeners, when it doesn't work, just trade. That's fine. No one can stop you. They're free, baby, until you run out. Same with boosting. Do whatever you want. Anyway, I hope that helps. That advice is specifically for Ron. Use all your trades. Lose. Thank you for cursing the traffic lights. But that's it for this episode of the Footy Mailbag. And hey, thank you. We love you. We really, really do appreciate you. But if you haven't given us a rating on your listening platform of choice, please do so. It does help new listeners find us, but not as much as it helps us if you just tell a friend. You got a friend who likes Supercoach and they don't listen to us, you tell them to come listen to us. You go, hey, look, these guys, they're like the Van Gogh abstract era of Supercoach podcasts where I'm not even sure what I'm listening to by the end of it when they've nebulized all of their listeners together. But remember, you can also find us over at the Footy Mailbag on pretty much every social media. For myself, you can find me at QuantumJC on Twitter, but you can also check out my other podcast, which is The Falcon. We're at Falcon Footy Pod, where we talk more specifically about the football. And this week I put together and show and telled my favorite bald/shaved head best 22 team of 2025. I had criteria. Go listen to the show and you'll find out. Damo, where can people find you?
It's at DamoSC on Twitter, add an underscore to that for Instagram. And we also have a website. You can also find us at thefootymailbag.net. You will find a playlist for our podcast feed, all of our merch, all of our written content, our traffic lights are there, links to our socials, and our question form. And remember, you can now send us memos, so you don't have to type your questions to us. You can just yell them at us, and we'll answer them if we can, understand what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe once we determine the quality of voice memos we're getting, if it's good enough, we might put it in the show. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll have an off. Maybe, you know what, Damo, I'm not going to discuss potential segment ideas on air. We'll see you next week, listeners. We love you. We'll talk next time. Good luck in round 4.